From the campus of the University of Kentucky, this is Behind the Blue. I'm Cody Kaiser with UK Strategic Communications.
Yeah, I mean, so physically, our body obviously is going into a state of arousal. I mean, so our hormones are going to kick in different capacities and in different ways. We're going to start feeling some physical reactions, whether it's sweat on our hands or increased heart rate or changes in our breathing pattern. We're going to see a lot of sort of different physical elements that are going to go into that. I think on my perspective, the other aspect that is critical, like you mentioned, is the mental side of it. And I think when you are in these high pressure moments, that our body has a tendency to respond in one of two ways, right? We either get excited, amped up, and ready for those pressure moments, or we want to stray away from those pressure moments. And I think our mental preparation is critical in how we go about our response to that. A lot of great athletes that are out there look at those high pressure moments as being their spot to shine. They're not doing anything different than they've done 1,000 other times, right? If I'm shooting a pressure free throw at the end of the game, I've shot thousands and thousands of free throws throughout my career. What has to make this one any different from the other ones in which I've shot? So they have the ability to regulate a little bit better and to not get drawn into the pressure of the moment, but instead to rely on their rehearsal, their practice, their preparation to put them in a position to succeed, where other athletes look at it and go, I have to make this shot or it could potentially be the end of the world. And that's not where you want athletes to be able to live, because at that point they lose focus on the mechanics, they lose focus on the preparation, and the fear of the moment takes over as opposed to the dependability that they've spent sometimes years and years being able to build up. It is. Now, I'm not a big fan of the cliches that are out there, because I think that all of the athletes that are competing, no matter what your sport is, are more than a free throw made or a free throw missed, or more than a double fault or not a double fault. I think they all have got a lot more to their identity to that. But I understand, right, when you're playing in these high performance, high pressure situations, and you've got whether it's 10 individuals or 10 million individuals that are watching you, that it hits you differently, and that you are going to feel that. I do think from a coaching perspective, and I've spent 18 years in competitive tennis coaching, and many of those at Division I collegiate programs will tell you that it is oftentimes the roles and responsibilities of the coaches, the support staff, and others to really make sure that these athletes are prepared and rehearsed over and over for these types of situations. You can't always simulate a last second shot, or as we get into March Madness, the chaos that is going to ensue. It's tough to simulate that in practice, but there are things that you can do that put your athletes in position to where it shouldn't be the first time that they are experiencing that. And then you're hoping, right? Because at that point, it does turn over to the athlete. You can remind them constantly, all right, remember the things that we've talked about. Remember your goals. Remember the mental rehearsal. Remember the imagery. Remember the mindful practice. Make sure that you're breathing. Make sure you've got consistent routines. But it's up to the athlete at those moments to be able to take what you have tried to instill in them and to actually put it into practice during those high pressure moments. It sounds so simple and so cliche, but a lot of it is, do you have the ability to control the controllables? And there are uncontrollables that exist in every sporting environment that we're at. Fans in the stands can't control what their behavior is going to be. All sorts of different things that are outside of my individual control. But when it comes to the performance related aspects of the sport, a lot of those are controllable. I can't always control what defensive scheme I'm going to see from a basketball team. I can't always control what set plays are going to be called or not going to be called, but I can control what is my responsibility in those particular moments, my energy, my effort, my focus to attention. All of those are things that are well within my ability to navigate as an athlete. I think you see the athletes that really excel in those high pressure moments do a great job controlling the controllables. They don't let the things that are outside of their purview impact their ability to step up in those moments and to be successful, or at least try to be successful. Nobody's going to make every last second shot that they take. It'd be a wild and ridiculous request to somebody. But you do have athletes that you trust in those moments because you know that they're attuned to it, they're ready for it, and you've got a higher probability that they will step up in that moment than you might with, say, another player that you have on your roster. We are in a world in which there are constant distractions around us, right? These little things right here, our cell phones, constant distractions, social media, constant distractions, right? Just anywhere you look, you could easily be pulled away from what you should be doing into something that could take you down a interesting pathway of non-productivity. And I think athletes understand that in order to be successful, that their ability to stay focused for extended periods of time and to stay locked in on the tasks that they're doing is something that all of us can really learn and that we can benefit from. Because you compare the small steps with great focus, and all of a sudden you've got outcomes that are coming your way on the backside. I think the other thing that athletes are really great at is that I think they're really reflective humans. I mean, athletes have no choice but to be able to learn on the fly in some situations, but to also be able to take at the end of a competition and to recap, whether it's through film footage or video or other things. And I know, right, we're not going to record ourselves working for a course of a day and go back and say, oh, from 9:30 to 10 o'clock, I was on my phone when I shouldn't have been. But we do all have the ability to be reflective in the work in which we do, and to actually honestly sit and answer questions about, all right, what did I do that was productive today? What were things that I did that detracted from my ability to achieve the level of stuff that I wanted to be able to get done? I think with that consistency in that reflection, you start to learn where are your distractors at. I also think you really are able to lean into what your strengths are and to help you utilize those strengths to transform the work that you're doing in all facets of your life. So, I mean, I wear many hats in the course of a day. Associate dean, tennis coach, father, husband, brother, friend, you name it, right? Different identities that I have. And up to me to make sure that I try, because of the focus, because of the attention, because of the ability to chunk out things, that I'm able to commit myself to each and every one of those identities to the best of my ability every day. I don't do it every day, right? I fail just as much as anybody else fails that is out there, but also I'm willing to sit and say, you know what, I did not have a great day and I got to be better tomorrow. And I think that's half of the battle out there.
Absolutely. So, March Madness is very exciting, but the late night games and constant bracket checking, all of this can disrupt our sleep schedule. And even a few nights of sleep deprivation, it can impair attention, memory, mood, decision making, and particularly fans and especially the students, it can also affect their academic performance, work productivity, and also emotional regulation.
And while a missed hour or two of sleep might feel manageable in the moment, Roth says the brain often tells a different story.
Yes, absolutely. So even small durations of sleep loss, it can cause cognitive changes, and it can affect attention, reaction time, decision making. And if it is even this reduced sleep duration is continued over few days, it, the effect can compound, and this leads to what we call sleep debt. And paying back the sleep debt can take several nights of adequate sleep to fully recover from it. So the way I say it is that as you accumulate the sleep debt, the interest also keeps increasing. So to pay it back, it can take several days to weeks. Losing sleep can affect several parts of our brain. Like I said, it can affect it can cause reduced concentration the next day. For students, it can make them more likely to have errors while at work or in school. It affects memory consolidation. So sleep is very important for converting short-term memory to long-term memory. So what they're learning, memory consolidation gets affected if they have less sleep. Poor sleep can impair learning new things. It also affects our decision making. So the prefrontal cortex, or the front part of our brain, it is less active if we are not sleeping enough. So individuals can become more impulsive or take risky decisions. And this is just about memory and cognitive effects. It also affects our mood and our emotional activity. So it makes sleep deprivation can make an individual irritable, anxious, more emotionally reactive, and so it can amplify the stress and frustration. So the effect, even if it's for a short duration, it can have widespread ramifications. So sleep deprivation can affect athletes also. So nearly all programs currently have realized and tried to incorporate the importance of sleep for the athletes. So sleep is critical for athletic performance, and if there is reduced sleep, it can affect the reaction time. It slows down their motor responses, so it can affect defensive reactions, shooting accuracy, coordination. Not only that, it can affect recovery. So sleep is important for muscle repair, hormone regulation. So if they are at increased risk for injury and with increased time for recovery if sleep is reduced.
So what do you do if you know the tournament is going to tempt you to stay up late anyway? Rath says it's not about giving up the fun entirely, it's about making choices.
Yes, few suggestions would be prioritize sleep on work and school nights. So pick one or two games instead of watching all of them. And currently, like there are highlights are available the next morning. So if you have time, you can watch them. So prioritize few games instead of watching all of them. So watch all the Wildcat games, but maybe hold off on others. Avoid frequent bracket checking. Then avoid screens right before bed. Have a set time to go to bed. Being strict about switching off the TV at the appropriate time, which you have already decided. Then have some time to cool down for the excitement to wear off, and avoid electronics at that time so that the melatonin release happens, so that you can go to bed at the right time. So, and ensure that you get adequate sleep every night.
His bottom line is simple: enjoy the games, but don't let sleep be the first casualty.
in Kentucky or any type of sport, really, we really have this idea of an identity. We see that team and our emotions get tied into that. So when they're doing well, we're excited, and when they're not doing well, we don't get as excited. But as we engage our brain and our body, it uses different pathways in our brain that don't always get activated, say if we're by ourselves or doing an activity that doesn't engage as much emotion. So we say in brain health that the more you can socialize with other people, really the better. Socialization is one of those pillars that's really strong for helping your brain stay strong. So by engaging with other people and by watching sports or going out to dinner or just having that sense of identity with the other team really is going to engage areas of your brain that are going to help it stay really strong over time. So we call mental or cognitive stimulation, if it's something that's new or if it's a little bit difficult and challenging, we can call it novel. So this idea that if you're not filling out brackets every single day as part of your day job, it's something that's relatively new into your daily routine, right? We only usually do it in March or April or maybe during football season or something like that. So doing things that engage the brain and working it in pathways. So if you think about pathways in your brain, similar to what a highway is, with all of these interconnections, messages go through the pathways in your brain like cars on a highway. So you can think about, this bracket, we know how to do this and we have the skills, but this is a different exit than we usually take. So we're going to use this part of the brain that isn't always engaged. Or if we actually can't figure out how to fill this one out and we have to grow a little bit, we're going to drive through the woods and actually create a new pathway. That's called neuroplasticity. And we can see that happen throughout the entire lifespan, regardless of what age you are. We can use areas of our brain that we don't typically engage through novel activities like filling out a bracket or following a team or engaging in ways that just aren't everyday typical activities. And that can actually grow new pathways and new brain cells and connections in your brain.
People always marvel, when their loved one has suffered from a stroke or a disease like Alzheimer's disease, and yet they really seem to perk up when the game is on. And they often comment, on, well, this is amazing. And I always think, these are some of our deepest, most emotional and entrenched memories. There's a comfort, a familiarity with the game being on. And a lot of those memories of teams and games are just ingrained in us all. So it's a way of finding that connection again. As they remember these entrenched memories, those synapses, those nerve cell to nerve cell connections have been strengthened, and turning them on again is a way to really get the entire brain turned on. And we know, just like physical exercise, you've got to move your body. The same holds true for your brain health. Those nerve cells need to talk to one another to be maximally healthy. And by doing so, actually each nerve cell sends to each other what are called nerve growth factors, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and it strengthens the brain. They fight against diseases like Alzheimer's, and they help us maintain healthy, normal brain function, irrespective of what may be potentially impairing it in any way. These novel types of engagements, the new engagements, the new excitement where we're leveraging. So in March Madness, when we're watching a game, it not only is helping to bring the brain alive through those strong connections that we've been able to preserve over time as a familiar engagement, but every game is different, as we know, and there are surprises and upsets and new brackets to think about or to fill out. And these are challenging, other connections between nerve cells that may not be as strong as some of our historical memories. And in doing so, beginning to strengthen those connections. So taking, the nerve connections that are weakening over time, bringing them back. If all we do are the same old things, if we watch the same sports game over and over again, we would keep those few connections involved with that particular aspect or activity engaged, but we wouldn't be turning on new areas of the brain. So this is incredibly important to keep folks engaged, not to just watch reruns of the same game over and over again. Sometimes we do like to go back and rewatch a game if it had some particularly fantastic plays in it, but as always, and March Madness is dynamic. It's changing. It's different every year. And the most important thing, so always challenging our brain with new things is great, but it has to be something that we love, because the brain really functions. The memory circuits and other circuits in the brain function as part of, at its core, what we call the limbic system. This is the emotional circuitry in the brain. So we do our best strengthening the brain when we activate the full limbic system. And so the more this is an enjoyable event, the stronger that stimulus for brain health and building new connections is really going to be. And so sports really fits in that bill. It's a little bit different, if you, are engaged in, I've never, really done Sudoku before, and you find out that you hate it, that is not going to strengthen your brain. If you love games, you've always loved the games in the past, the strategies there, that gives us that leverage to really turn on that limbic system and power up the ability of the nerve cells to strengthen, heal, and help one another. So yes, new stimuli are great, but they do rely on that really emotional enjoyment of the activity. And that's the strength, I think, that sports, filling out a bracket, we think of these as mundane activities, or perhaps, a person not being able to do them if they're more impaired. And yet they can be some of the most powerful experiences to really induce brain health, to really promote that, passage of those nerve growth factors from nerve cell to nerve cell, much better than doing something that we've never liked to do before in the past and have no interest really in doing currently.
Yeah. And thinking about being overwhelmed, we can start, sometimes people will get really quiet. Sometimes they'll get pale. Sometimes they'll start making really loud sounds in an attempt to drown out what is overwhelming to them. Sometimes people will try to walk away. And in dementia world, sometimes we label it as wandering, but it might not be wandering. It might just be that they need a break. So watching for these signs is a good way to kind of gauge how are they feeling, and are they still engaging and interacting at a typical pace and space, or are we seeing changes that don't seem aligned? And we never want to compare an older adult to a child, but if you think about the behaviors and the neurological system and how it operates, if you had a 5-year-old who was in a party and really engaged, and they started looking sweaty and pale and having meltdowns and things like that, you would probably take them out of that situation. Similar to if in a situation, if you have an older adult whose brain has, a condition that's actually killing off brain cells, is what it is, they might start looking pale or sweaty or reclusing or acting out. And so we want to make sure that we're creating space to help that recover. And in dementia, it can take hours for the brain to recover whenever it does become overwhelmed. So just being, as a caregiver, being prepared. If you're at a party or if you're at a loud restaurant, that could happen, and just being extra kind and patient on the back end to know that it could take hours for that person to calm back down. Those two things, cognitive stimulation with novel exercises and challenges, and staying social, are really the two biggest things. We talk about 4 pillars of brain health. Social interaction, cognitive stimulation are 2 of the 4. The other 2 are physical activity. So getting out and moving, running on a basketball court or dribbling a ball. 150 minutes a week is what we recommend to have good physical health. That if it's good for your heart, it's good for your brain. And the other one is nutrition. So even if you're going to stock up on all of the party junk food at the party during the game and the tournament season, that's fine. But then making sure throughout the season or the year that you're getting plenty of water and that you're getting plenty of fiber and nice sources of fruits and vegetables and protein. So thinking about those 4 pillars of brain health, social interaction, cognitive stimulation, physical exercise, and solid, good nutrition are the things that are going to keep your brain the healthiest for the longest.
I would say that number one, when I think about the teams themselves, the coaches, the players never give up, right? That's what they do, and we do the same. And then what we can carry forward in the year is not only that indomitable spirit, both the winners as well as those who may not proceed as far in the brackets, they all carry that same indomitable spirit. Number 2, that simple things that are happening around us in the world are cause for getting together and engaging physically, engaging mentally, and engaging socially. And so I really do think we can learn that lesson. Simply saying, well, March Madness is over, I guess we won't have another, big get together to do until next year, would be a waste. We can make a joyous and challenging event out of virtually anything that comes our way. So keep that spirit of March Madness alive, even if it's August or November. It's there. The components are there. We really do need to carry it with us and not just think of March Madness as just happening in the month of March.
It might depend a little bit from person to person, right? There's always going to be some variation between people. But I think you're definitely going to get a blend for most people, right? It's probably going to be pretty rare that someone is just drawing on the basketball statistics to fully make their bracket. Your personal, like desires and, based on your identities with a particular sports team or as a sports fan are really going to shape that, right? If you really want UK to win, you might push them further in your bracket than the stats might suggest. Or if you really don't want Duke to win, you might be really hesitant to put them as winning your full bracket when you really don't want to see that happen. So I think it's definitely a mix of both, sort of our personal, desires and the basketball stats. We would call that like in-group favoritism or like a kind of in-group bias, if you want to get technical. But that's definitely something that's probably going on here. We tend to see the groups or teams we're a part of or that we root for more favorably, and tend to overlook their weaknesses. We can say like, oh, maybe they've lost more games this season because of just some random fluke in the situation. But like, really, we know that they're good. So we're going to sort of overestimate, their individual capabilities as a team and maybe like underestimate, really what's going on there. By talking to people, you might sort of build yourselves up, right? Like if you're talking to other UK fans, being amongst more UK fans and talking about UK specifically might cause everyone to really double down on it, and make that sort of favoritism or more prominent. And so, again, that could sort of push you to make them go even further than the stats might say. Sports in general are a great site or a more frequent site that people will express, community and belonging. They really can bring people together, while everyone is sort of organizing around their team that they know and they love and they want to see do well. But sports also just bring people together, right? If you are going to attend games, you're in a huge crowd of people and you feel sort of this like electricity or when you're around a bunch of other people all watching a game at the same time in the same place, or even if you're just out at a sports bar all watching the game at the same time and place, it builds a sense of community and belonging from that sort of shared environment where everyone's focused on the same thing, rooting for the same team. So it can really build a sense of solidarity amongst people. Maybe you might go into this March Madness bracket and acknowledge that putting UK in the Final Four is maybe not the most realistic thing. But I think for the most part, a lot of these can be pretty subtle. You might not, recall that you were influenced by a conversation that you had with your friend a couple of months ago, but that might still seep into your brackets. You might not realize that because you really don't want Duke to win, that, you're overlooking how good they've been this season, right? Because you just really don't want to see it. And that might not even register with you all the way, that you've been subtly, biased against them in this whole way. Even if you can recognize, yeah, I obviously don't want them to win, but you might not realize how much you're discounting it. We're not limited to only filling out one bracket. You can make multiple scenarios depending on, one's like, okay, this is just stats, I ran them this way, and one's playing it out with your heart. And, that's great. And I think that's true. That is indicative of at least some awareness that people will have that like they might not be making the most best statistically informed brackets. But, I think that's still okay. That's a method. That's a strategy you can use.
Behind the Blue is a production of the University of Kentucky. For more stories about how the University of Kentucky is advancing our Commonwealth, visit uknow.uky.edu.